Murmurs passed through the gaggle of women. "Who are they?" Elizabeth asked. "They're your competition. If I heard about the job, be sure everyone else has too." "Gaspar, I don't stand a chance against any one of those women." "Perhaps not, but worth a try. Just do your best." A matronly woman in more sophisticated skirts stepped out of the house and inspected the candidates. "That's her," said Gaspar. "You'd better go and join them. Go on." "I can't do this." "Sure you can. That house there is nothing, just another rotten tooth." He took her hand and helped her step off the wagon. "I'll be waiting here. If it doesn't work out, we'll go home and think of something else." Elizabeth climbed down and joined the gaggle, while Gaspar moved his wagon alongside the back of the house to another service door. The matronly woman didn't say a word as she walked around the young ladies, inspecting each girl like furniture. Her gait was like her shape, rather lumpy. Still, she bore an air of authority, despite being barely 5 feet tall. Her chin maintained a strong parallel relationship with the ground, while her eyes moved up and down over the girls. Her dark red hair had some feathers of white streaked through her tightly fastened bun, but her skin was like smooth cream, without a flaw on it, though, like the rest of her, slightly pudgy. She stopped at Elizabeth, as though waiting. "Who are you?" "I'm Elizabeth." "Who are you?" the woman asked again. "Oh, of course, I'm sorry. I'm Donna Elizabeth." A flutter of chuckles passed through the applicants. Oh, hell! Gaspar had made her memorize a short series of Spanish names, but she'd hoped not to have to recite it so quickly and with such a tremor in her hands. I'm Senorita Elizabeth Marta Lopez Montilla. She ended the final syllable with triumph and relief. "I'm here with my uncle, Don Gaspar, who makes the cheese." She gestured to Gaspar waiting in his wagon. The woman glanced over her shoulder at Gaspar and then eyed Elizabeth up and down again with one raised eyebrow before inspecting the recruits one more time in renewed silence. "All right," she said, choosing. You two, you, and—" She hesitated for a moment, with her finger reluctantly kept aloft, while glancing over her shoulder again at Gaspar, who smiled and gave a friendly nod. "And cheese, girl." Elizabeth sighed, amazed by what the reputation of good cheese can do. "You 6 come inside. The rest of you can go." Elizabeth and the other 5 candidates followed the woman through the service entrance into a large mud room where cool lanterns, aprons, and tools hung on the walls. They passed through a long, narrow corridor that moved lengthwise through the center of the house, shooting off in various workrooms where servants engaged in tasks from chopping wood to polishing leathers. She heard chatter in some of the rooms, some hammering and pounding, and smelled something astringent. However, as they passed 4 cramped staircases and 1 large dining room, the 6 candidates did not converse between themselves. At length, they turned left into a small, windowless office. "There, line up against that wall," the woman said. "I am Donna Marcellina." Elizabeth had to hold back a gasp. "And we only need 1 girl, so 5 of you will leave today disappointed. The last girl who held this position had to be let go because she found herself in a maternal situation. I assume we don't need to emphasize to you that such behavior on these premises will not be tolerated. Now, you will each tell me your abilities and your experience." The girl on the opposite end of the line began describing her qualifications. Elizabeth didn't understand half of what she said. She still didn't even know what position she was applying for, and now knew beyond any doubt that this whole venture was hopeless. By the time it came her turn, she was fighting off both tears and laughter. She had a mental vision of Reggie doing interviews for her position back at the college, since she would undoubtedly never get back home from 18th century Spain. She imagined Reggie stifling chuckles as young, desperate pianists told of their experience and background. Some bachelors in music from somewhere or other, a list of teachers, half of them well-known and not worth anything, and the other half decent technicians. But then he would put them on the bench and tell them to sight read and expect them to follow the stick like it was one of their own limbs. She could get that job. That was her job. Why did Reggie want her to go away? Here in the Count's basement, the other girls were far more qualified than her for just about anything in this century. She didn't understand half of what they were saying and wished she had Google or some other search engine on hand to look this stuff up. Every now and then the other candidates would utter a word she understood, like laundry or baking. She shuddered at the word scullery. It sounded too much like skull and made her think of pirates and Hamlet. Skull. It came her turn and Elizabeth stuttered more than anything. She knew enough to say something about sewing and perhaps over-elaborated on the few skills she had learned from Gaspar, but her list was still much shorter than the others. When she finished, Donna Marcellina stared on at her in silence, while the other girls snickered. At great, agonizing length, Donna Marcellina's countenance reshaped itself to total disgust as she inhaled to pronounce, "Well, it's very obvious," that a knock at the door interrupted, and a young woman's voice came from the doorway behind her. "Excuse me, Aunt, but it's very important." Marcellina rolled her eyes and trod out of the room. The 6 girls could hear scattered tidbits of the conversation taking place just outside the door. Marcellina's voice direct and shrill, the young housemaid softer and indistinguishable. "What? Which one?" "Are you sure?" "Well, how can you know that? Did you get a good look?" "One more time, are you absolutely sure?" Marcellina cried out as one injured to her soul. The door opened again, and she stood before Elizabeth with a long, windy snort. "Very well," she said. "Cheese girl. If you can start right now, you have the job. The rest of you may go." After the necessary gasps of incredulity, the 5 other girls left with tight-lipped glares. When the door closed, Donna Marcellina leaned against it. "Wait, I don't understand," Elizabeth said. "You've got to be joking. Do you want the job or don't you?" "But I'm horribly underqualified." "Well, surely any one of those girls could have been a better choice. What on earth could have ever—" Marcellina raised a hand and turned back to the door. A young servant girl stepped inside. "May I present my niece?" Marcellina said. "Amada, this is Elizabeth. I believe you have already met." Amada was young, probably only 15 years old, with light brown hair and caramel skin, but indeed familiar. Elizabeth had met this girl before.